It's 7 a.m. I'm in my pajamas in the kitchen, bent over the laptop. I Google insulin, overdose, fatal. I scan the results, then add cat. An insulin overdose can cause severe hypoglycemic shock, fatal if not immediately treated. There's advice on how to avoid it, but I find nothing that specifies how much is a fatal dose. Of course not. Why would there be? I hear my sons getting up and I close the laptop. I kiss their sleep-sweaty heads as they bounce into the kitchen. John is 5 and fully a boy now, but Sam at 3 still has his delicious baby scent. While I rummage in the pantry for the oatmeal, the cat creeps into the kitchen and positions himself between my feet. My sons start up their usual clamor for Fruit Loops. I look at them, then down at the yowling cat, and put the oatmeal back. John finishes his cereal, and the cat yowls for the leftover milk. I put the bowl on the floor. But Mom, John says, you said that cereal milk was bad for his diabetes. Caught. I know, honey. I reach out with my toes to rub the cat's neck. It's okay this once. It's 10 p.m. My husband Bill is still at work, or somewhere. He hasn't been home before midnight in a long time. My sons are asleep. I'm back in the kitchen getting a plate of leftover chicken from the refrigerator. The cat is winding himself around my ankles. I unwrap the plate and put it on the floor. He sniffs at it. Go on, I say. He takes a tiny lick, then sits back on his haunches and starts meowing at me. Oh, come on. I snatch it up off the floor. I peel the skin from the wings and the thighs and put the mess in the microwave. After a few seconds, I slice the skin into tiny pieces and put the plate back on the floor. It's your favorite part? He stood over it, nose twitching, but does not touch it. I leaned against the counter with my arms folded, watching him not eat for a few minutes. Okay, I say finally, dumping the chicken into the garbage. I bring the glass vial and the syringe into my bedroom, knowing the cat will be on my heels. I sit cross-legged on the bed and he leaps up, stiff and awkward. He lies down alongside me, pressing up as close as he can. I wonder if he notices that for once I'm not shoving him away. I've been administering his injections long enough that I handle it like an army medic or a drug addict, yanking off the protective cap with my teeth and filling it from the vial with one hand. He settles in and, accustomed to the procedure, does not pause in his purring as I push the plunger down and refill the syringe, over and over. The cat was my husband's idea. I wanted a dog. But when we went to the animal shelter 15 years ago, 2 newlyweds, this cat thrust both of his front paws through the bars of the cage, jamming his chin sideways. When I gave it my fingers, he licked at them like a dog. That was good enough for me. Bill and I were both working 18-hour days at our respective law firms. We dragged ourselves through the door late at night, and the cat was instantly between ankles. He stood on his back feet and clutched at our pant legs with his front claws. I backed away, dodging his paws to save my clothes. Bill said I was heartless and scooped him up. But Bill wasn't home much, and the cat was left wanting. Over the next decade, the cat became diabetic. He developed a perpetually leaky bladder, then bowels. We had 2 sons by then, and I spent my days and nights feeding and cleaning 3 needy bodies. But while I was biologically programmed to love my children despite any amount of literal or figurative shit, the same could not be said for the cat. I took him to the vet every 2 weeks. I drove across town to get his prescription food. I gave him insulin twice a day. But if he brushed against me, I bristled. Before the cat and the kids, I thought that I was a bottomless well of affection. But now I found myself resenting every bit of attention the cat demanded, and every bit that was carelessly lavished on him by anyone. when my husband, lying on the couch with the cat asleep on his chest, asked me to get up and retrieve something so he wouldn't have to disturb the cat. I knew in my bones that I was capable of murder. When our older son started kindergarten, my husband and I decided to divorce, and I decided to kill the cat. We sat at the small table in the kitchen, each so tightly packed with bitterness that we could barely speak. We couldn't look at each other. We hadn't touched in months. We were dry-eyed and exhausted. That the cat must die seemed a logical and unavoidable product of the circumstances. His diabetes had gotten worse, and his body was a collection of failures. It was absolutely clear to me, in a way that very little else was, that I could no longer care for the cat. This was altruism, saving him from neglect. This, unlike all the rest, was suffering I could prevent. It's clear I've used enough insulin. Within a minute of the third injection, the cat is breathing heavily through his mouth. He lurches toward the edge of the bed, and I lift him onto the floor. He creeps under the bed, and I sit back down on top of it. I listen for any sound from beneath me, but there's silence. I wait for the horror in myself to emerge, but there's nothing. I turn on the TV. Conan O'Brien leans on an elbow across his desk from a grinning starlet. The boys crawl into our bed the next morning. Instead of the usual weekend sleep-in, I hustle them out of bed and into the kitchen. After breakfast, Bill and the boys are gardening in the backyard. He calls in to me and asks me to bring the pruning shears from the garage. I step into the cool darkness, crowded with the accumulation of more than a decade. Boxes of books, furniture that no longer has a place, wedding gifts with the tag still attached, the infant swing waiting there in the dark for the third child who won't be coming. And there is the cat, lying on the concrete floor. He's so clearly dead. Today, my sons don't talk about the divorce, but my sons do talk about the cat, how much they miss him, and how completely unfair and awful it is that he had to die. These discussions always happen in the car, inspired by some lost love song on the radio. There's one song in particular we have on CD, Lately by Stevie Wonder. It's the fourth song in, and as the third song ends, I adjust my rearview mirror to see John behind me. He's always prepared to meet my eyes, and I raise my eyebrows to ask, "You ready, or should we skip it this time?" He takes a deep breath and gives a tiny nod, his eyes sliding away from mine in the mirror. The song begins, and his face goes still, and when it ends, he asks for it again. I engage in this ritual mourning with them like a penitent. Notwithstanding my lack of religious faith, I understand the flagellant's conviction that pain is the route to absolution. "Can you play the song again, Mom?" "Yes, yes, yes." I do not know whether I'm healing their wounds or salting them. During a recent car ride, when the song was over, John asked me, "How much did you love the cat?" He pauses. "Did you love him with your whole heart?" I press my lips together. I want desperately to lie. "No, I didn't. Not with my whole heart. Not like I love you." "Did you used to, like before we were born?" My heart pounds as I drive. "I don't know, honey. I think I like the idea of having a pet, but I didn't really love him." He's silent a while.